Hi, my name is Mark. I'm here with Wilderness Medics, and today we're going to talk about the CAT, Combat Applied Tourniquet. So before we even talk about the tourniquet and how to use it and when to use it and when not to use it, we're going to make sure we're ready to go, and we're going to talk about how to stage your tourniquet. There's two different methods that I like to use. This one here is a two-fold method, and I like to store my tourniquet in my pack using this method. So what we're going to look at right now is how this is done. We're going to start out by taking our tourniquet out of the package, and we're going to open it up fully. We're going to feed the tab through about 3/4 of the way down. We're going to bring it in on top of itself. We're going to fold it over on top of itself. And then we are going to take our tab, open it back up, and we are going to stick it down in the holder for the windlass and put the windlass right on top of it, just like that. And that is how my CAT sits in my pack. Now, another way that people stage their tourniquets is the combat method, which is right here. A lot of times combat troops will have their tourniquet with the tab sticking out of their pocket so everyone knows where their tourniquet's at. Now, when combat troops deploy their tourniquet, they use the tri-fold method, and they do it because it allows for a much larger opening. So how do we fold it this way? Once again, we're going to start by opening up our tourniquet completely. This time, we are going to only feed about 1 inch of the tab through. Once that's fed through, we're going to start folding this on top of itself, just like this. We're going to do it once, twice, and that allows for 3 folds right there. Now that this is all folded together, we can take and open up that tab, put it in our pocket, and have the tail hanging out so everyone can see where our tourniquet is at. Now, tourniquets are very, very, very important because they are our best method at stopping arterial bleeds in the field. There have been a lot of misconceptions about tourniquets in the past. Things like if you put a tourniquet on somebody, they're going to lose their limb for sure. Not true, total and complete urban myth. Another thing that I want you to think about is this. Manufactured approved tourniquets are your best option. Homemade tourniquets, things like using a t-shirt and a stick, a belt, whatever, they have an 85% failure rate on average. So if you see that there is a homemade tourniquet on your patient, leave it there and put your tourniquet above it. We never take tourniquets off, we never loosen them, and we never reposition them once we're on. So the other thing you need to think about after you've staged your tourniquet is exactly where are you on the firing line. You should be familiar with Avenza and how to use Avenza maps. You should be familiar with how to read a topographical paper map. You should be proficient with your radio communication skills. And you should have been communicating with your task force leaders and your division soups throughout your deployment. It is very, very important that you are able to arrive at your patient in a timely manner, because every drop of blood that's on the ground, that patient is 1 second closer to dying. As a matter of fact, if you have a major arterial bleed, you can bleed out within 3.5 to 4 minutes. And that is not a whole lot of time when you're out in the middle of nowhere, and definitive care can be up to hours away. So now let's demonstrate how to apply the CAT. I'm going to have my assistant Molly come up along with her passenger, and we are going to apply the tourniquet. So we have our tourniquet. We're going to pull it as tight as we can with the tail. Once we have that as tight as we can, now we're going to take our windlass, and it should take between 1 and 1.5 turns with the windlass in order to occlude the artery. That means that there should not be a pulse any longer, and that also means that there should not be any spurting blood, because arterial bleeding spurts to the rhythm of your heart. Once this is done, we're going to take the tail. We're going to go around the windlass, and we're going to go under, just like that. And we are going to use that to hold the windlass in place, and then we are going to write the time the tourniquet was applied right there on the time slip. It is imperative that you write down when the tourniquet was applied, and it is imperative, thank you, that you chart this and you document this correctly. Why? Because anytime we deploy a tourniquet, that right there is an extreme event. That is something that is out of the ordinary. That is something that is low frequency and high risk. And that needs to be documented better than anything. Now, let's talk about a scenario. Let's say you're out on a fire and you hear over the radio that a 30-year-old faller, somebody who cuts down trees, has been cutting down snags and a limb kicked back and it punctured his thigh and he's bleeding. And his crew calls over the radio that they need help and that, you know, the guy's bleeding and people are frantic. Well, what's going to happen is somebody's going to start responding to that and become the IC, the incident commander. This is what we call an incident with an incident. It's going to have its own incident commander, and it should never be the person that's treating the patient. You cannot do two things at once. You cannot treat the patient and be the incident commander. So you have to be one or the other, and you're here to treat the patient. Once you arrive, you find that this patient is about 200 feet off the road, near a drop point, and that the crew that's been with him has had a t-shirt and a trauma pad, and they've been applying direct pressure to that wound, but it is soaked completely through. So what do? We're going to take our tourniquet, we're going to go a few inches above the site of the injury, and we are going to occlude that artery and stop that bleed. Because remember, every drop of blood on the ground is 1 second that patient is closer to dying. Once we have that wound occluded, once we have stopped that arterial flow, once the pulse has been stopped to that extremity, what are we going to do next? I want an immediate set of vitals. Why? Because I want to know the patient's condition. That immediate set of vitals is going to tell me whether or not they are hemodynamically challenged. It's going to tell me whether or not they're in shock. It's going to tell me whether or not they are going to be able to be moved easily. It's going to tell me whether or not this patient is going to require immediate, definitive, rapid transport. So once we have a set of vitals, once we know where we're going to take this patient, whether it's going to be an LZ for flight or if it's going to be down to the road to meet up with the ground transport, once we have those things figured out, once we know, are we going to be able to use a UTV to get them down? Are we going to have to carry them? Are we going to put them in a pickup? Once all those things have been figured out, we're going to take that patient either to the LZ or to meet up with the ground transport so that way they can get to definitive care. Now remember, there are some times when you do not apply a tourniquet. You never, ever, ever apply a tourniquet to the torso. You never apply a tourniquet to the neck unless it's your mother-in-law. And you never apply tourniquets to junctional wounds. That will be here and in the pelvis. Those places will not be controlled by a tourniquet. So take your time, go through your equipment, know how to read your maps, and be proficient in what you're doing and be ready to go. Thank you.